what happens when things go wrong, as they will. So compared to debugging non-SAS applications, there's some difficulties that you might not have thought of. For example, if you're used to printing things on the terminal, like to standard error, it's not clear what standard error means for a web app whose primary form of I/O is through HTTP requests and responses. And also, because there's this long list of moving parts, something that goes wrong, in the controller might not manifest until the rendering step, that, which is many steps later. So the root cause of an error might actually have happened a long time ago. So the error might be hard to localize. If maybe it only affects some users, or maybe it only affects some routes. It depends on the phase of the moon. So there's a couple of different approaches, and these are sort of the three most popular ones, along with is each one appropriate in development mode and appropriate in production mode. So in development mode, you can kind of do anything you want, right? It's just your machine. You control the universe. So you can print stuff to the terminal. It'll go by really fast. It'll be hard to read, but you could certainly do it. You can write stuff to the log file, which is much more general, and also critically works in production mode, right? The log file is a permanent record of what your app is doing. So if you write something to the log file, you can go back and look at it later. And as we'll see, you can use interactive debugger as well. So you can actually stop the app in its tracks and kind of inspect the state of, look at the variables, see what's going on, and then continue. Debugging is a fact of life, so I will give you 4 tips on what to do when you get an error message. The first one, surprisingly, is read the error message. Seriously, read it. Okay? Don't throw up your hands. The error messages are long, but it's because they're trying to tell you something. I'll show you in a moment how you might want to read one. Ask a colleague. If you're doing pair programming or other people in your class, ask them an informed question. Don't say, this doesn't work. Say, I'm trying to do this. I did this, which I thought was right, but whereas I expected foo, I got this other thing, or I got this specific error message. Search. Stack Overflow rocks. Even Google is useful for a lot of these things, right? Especially if the error is something that is specific to a version of, this version of Ruby or this version of a library has a problem. Other versions don't have it. Sites like Stack Overflow are really, really useful for this. And if searching doesn't yield anything, post a question. That's what those sites are for. However, others are just as busy as you, if not more. So don't post a question saying, this doesn't work. Here's my 78 lines of error message. Get the minimal information that you can that still reproduces the problem you have and post that. And you'll get a reply, seriously, in minutes sometimes. So what about these error messages? Error messages are your friend. They show you not only what went wrong, but a great deal of detail about where it went wrong. Let us cause an error deliberately so you can see what I mean. Suppose that I try to call, let's see, is my movies thing running? Let's run my app. Yeah, but that's a trivial error. OK, so now hopefully this thing is running. It's running soon. OK, now it's running. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to deliberately create a route that I know doesn't work. This should map to the show action for movie ID 99999, which I can assure you doesn't exist. OK, so what can we learn from the error message? Well, the first thing we can tell is what the problem, who raised the error. Active record raised it, record not found. That should tell you a lot. Not only can I tell where it happened, and here's the executive summary of the error, I can also say where in my application did it happen. It happened at line 5 of movies controller. That's pretty good. But suppose line 5 of movies controller looks OK to me. Well, where in Rails did it happen? This is where I was in active record when it happened. I can follow this call. And by the way, you can load every one of these files, right? Rails is just a library written in Ruby. It's not compiled. And somewhere in here, you can see, if I scroll far enough down, eventually I'll find that there's places where my method was being called. Oh, so here's the initial call to the service. Isn't this fun? I can also do the full trace. This is show me everything. Every method call from the moment that the web server got control to the moment that something barfed. Right? Now, the majority of the time, somewhere in the first 3 or 4 lines is going to be a problem. But the point is, don't throw up your hands, right? This is trying to tell you something. Use the information. What other wisdom can I convey in the 1 minute that we have left? If you see undefined method foo for nil, 9 times out of 10, it means you did something like this, and you didn't check the result. And then you tried to call m.title, and it barfed. I'll show you one very cool trick, because we're going to run out of time, but you're going to appreciate that I did this. I started my app with the -- debugger flag. That means that in my controller, for example, let's go back to the show method. There it is. I'm going to put in the word debugger right here, save my file, and now I'm going to try triggering that same error again. And what's happening? What's happening is I am in the debugger. Okay? I can see the exact state of my application as if I was interactively inside this method. So I can look at what is params. That's pretty cool. That's helpful for debugging. I can step through the debugger. Movie find.id. Oh, movie is nil. There's my problem right there. Okay, this is the big guns. But every once in a while, the debugger is the only way to go.